So this is the last of the 3-pack album reviews that I'm doing for my patron, Matthew Caveat Zealot. Thank you so much, Matthew, for donating to my Patreon. Apologies that it's taken really a long time to put this out. He was recommending a lot of music that, as you could probably tell with his first two, like, it's not my usual MO. It did kind of push me out of my comfort zone a little bit, but in the best possible way. And the Sceptic's Universe is the last one, so let's talk about this one. A Sceptic's Universe by Spiral Architect. So, Spiral Architect is a Norwegian kind of extreme metal or progressive metal band. They only really put out one album, which is A Sceptic's Universe. When I was first listening to this album, as I was listening to it, I'm like, man, this is some really good, like, early 90s metal. Like, we're thinking of, like, Fate's Warning or early Dream Theater or, you know, something that was along those lines of, like, you know, really gritty, very pushing of boundaries for the time. It had this kind of raw edge to it that I really, really enjoyed that, say, like Metallica was using. And the bass, I'm going to call out the guy's name because he really needs to be called out. Lars K. Norberg. Fantastic bass playing. Like, that's the real highlight for me out of the entire album. I loved how punchy it was. It had its signature sound to it that made it apparent right from the get-go. And this was, again, as I was listening to it, in my mind, it was at the time where the bass was very muddled. There wasn't a whole lot of, like, real identity with the bass. Then I checked the date of when this was recorded, and it was released in 2000. And for me, I was a little let down, honestly, because I had found out that this was released in the year 2000, because it felt old. I know that's going to sound weird, but when I was listening to this, I was really expecting this to be released in like 1992, 1993, maybe even 1994, at that cutting edge of this raw style of metal. And to find out that it was released, you know, 6 or 7 years after that fact, it brought me out a little bit. I'm not going to lie. It brought me out ever so slightly, and it felt more like a callback than anything else. But other than that initial letdown, I did get into the music, and as I said with a lot of other albums that I've been listening to, this isn't necessarily the kind of metal that I like. It's a little bit more on the raw side. It's a little bit more on the sharp side. The production value on this album isn't the best. It needs a little bit of polish. Now, on the one hand, it does add to the enjoyment factor of it. It does feel a lot more raw. It does feel a lot more real in that sense. A lot of those moments that I wanted just a little bit of a crisp atmosphere where I really wanted to suss out the difference between the one or two of the guitar licks wasn't quite there. But let's actually talk about the music that's found within this. This music is definitely very sophisticated, very complex, and very snappy. There's definitely a lot of note sequences going on here. They shift from one riff right into another riff, right into another riff. I can see these guys really influencing a lot of metal works in the later part of the 2000s, being very fast, being very punchy, but never really itching into that brutal aspect of this. They're extreme tech in the fact that they're very fast, they're very punchy, and they're very speedy. But that's about it. And the songs are also very condensed. And that was another thing that I was really hoping. I wanted these guys to just stretch their legs into, say, a 7-minute track. Like, the longest track is tied at being 6.5 minutes. So I was really hoping for something just to, like, you know, stretch some of those playouts a little bit. But yeah, I mean, overall, this isn't necessarily an album that I would seek out, nor would I probably revisit again. After my, you know, initial introduction and getting familiar with it for the review and my own speaking about the album, there isn't a whole lot for me to really talk about and to digest, just because this isn't necessarily my style of metal. This is definitely a style of metal for those who are musicians. They'll get a lot more out of it. People that are into guitar works and like really loving that kind of stuff are just going to gush about a lot of these. But if you're not in the know, it's not really a lot here that you can't find elsewhere. And this doesn't have to do with the music at all, but the other thing about it is it's really hard to find. Like, this is the main reason why it took me so long to get into this review, because the only place I can find this album was on YouTube, and even then, like, it doesn't really tell you which song is which and anything like that, and it's also a watered down product whenever it's uploaded to YouTube, so listening to it was a little bit of a drag in that sense, but it was still good music, and it wasn't anything that I was like dreading listening to get into it. But I mean, now that my time with it is done, I probably won't be revisiting it just because it's not my style of music. But overall, this is an album that I would recommend streaming. You know, it's not one that I would say don't seek out. If you're looking for kind of that raw metal of the early 90s, this is definitely for you. And I know Matthew Caveat Zealot is, you know, he knows his stuff. So if he's saying that this is a good work, I gotta back him up on that. But for my own personal enjoyment, it's a stream. And that's about it. That's all I really have to say about A Sceptic's Universe. There wasn't a whole lot for me to really dive in and sink my teeth into, and there was nothing really that I really wanted to talk about this album as well, outside of just having a good time with it. So that's about it. What did you guys think? Do you know Spiral Architect? And if you do you know their only album of A Sceptic's Universe? And what do you think about it? Let me know about all of that by commenting down below. Was there something I missed about this album that wasn't really connecting with me? Do I need to take a look at it from a different vantage point? Let me know. And thank you so much, Matthew, for donating to my Patreon. Thank you so much. Really, it means the world to me. You introduced me to a bunch of music, some that I love, some that I didn't. But, you know, I always love having my horizons broadened, and you definitely did that. So yeah, if you want to donate to my Patreon, keep this thing going, keeping this thing alive, do so. I've left that link down below as well. So thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.